forward here, and then Kyle is going to lead us through our presentation today.
Man, I really appreciate that grounding right there, Chad. That
Yeah,
was wonderful. I needed that all day.
right. Can feel it in your
And
body, right? Where you're just like,
oh
whoa,
man, yeah,
holding
my
on to
heart
a
was like
lot.
I was like on adrenaline high or something, like because I get like in presentation mode, like
Uh,
professor mode. It was just really great. So thank you for speaking up and
yeah,
making sure we did that
for
because we
sure.
missed it, I think, last time too, didn't we?
We
We missed that
did.
on. Let's not miss that again. That was fantastic, and maybe a little
Yeah.
longer next time. All right, well, let me jump in here, and so I've got some slides queued up, and we're going to talk about motivation and again, I know that we all talk about we all know motivation, right? And so I may not teach you anything new today, but I do want to try to kind of break it apart a little bit and try to understand specifically what is out there with regards to motivation. What are some of the important characteristics, and then the goal would be is working from this sort of base definition, we'll expand into some theories of motivation and some ways to actually apply this in the workplace. And so just a quick quote. I know it's us Colts fans, we don't like throwing up Bill Belichick's name, but a great quote, right? This guy's been a champion, whether you like his style or not, and it's about being coachable, right? Knowing what you need to do to get better, and so when we get into motivation, I think one of the things that we naturally think of is sort of, what are our goals, right? This sense of forward looking direction or opportunity. And I know that Rob has shared, he's really looking at, this sort of segue into a new career, as he starts to wrap up his traditional corporate career, right? You know, um, some of us are still trying to figure out what we want to do when we grow up, right? Chad's working on this podcast. We have a sense of what we want our future to look like, and we then have to try to find a way to put that into action, right? What do we have to do? What behaviors do we have to demonstrate? What energy do we need to bring? Those sort of things to achieve those goals. And so very easily, I think we think of this first component of motivation, which is this idea of direction. And so a lot of folks think that, well, I know what it is I want to go do. I know what my goals are. I know what's important to me. So therefore, I am motivated. And I don't think we speak enough about these other two components of motivation. This idea of intensity. So I love doing this example in class, for students. And I'll say, look, I know I want to exit the door. I know where the door is to get out of the room. I'm motivated to leave, but then I start shuffling my feet like grandma to get there, right? And so showing no intensity. So am I motivated? Yeah, I'm motivated, but am I as motivated as I can be? Have I channeled the energy into my actual behavior to deliver the results, right? And I think we just don't spend enough time thinking about that. We don't spend enough time talking about it. And then this other component of persistence. And we talk a lot about the students that came through the whole COVID experience, right? And they haven't learned as much or whatever, and maybe they aren't as motivated. Well, they probably knew very clearly, a lot of them, what their direction and their goals were, and they even applied themselves the best they could, but they found themselves getting very distracted and derailed by the online experience and the temptation of their phone sitting next to them or their bed. I remember going and seeing Leo laying in his bed like this. He's got no shirt on. He's got a gold chain on. He's supposed to be in history class. I'm thinking, what are you doing? Right. Well, that's hard, right? That ability to resist temptation, to adapt to sort of the new experiences that might be presented at you, and 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 now all of a sudden you look like you're not motivated, and it's not really a component of direction as much as it is distraction. And we're getting tons and tons of people diagnosed with ADHD, right? And their ability to stay on task affects their ability to accomplish their goals. And it's really a component, I argue, of motivation. And And so you start looking at, what if I could blend all three of these together? What if on a particular goal I am very clear of why I value that goal, and I am very energetic about accomplishing it, and I won't be distracted. Then we're on to something. And so digging in each of these a little bit deeper, again, as we get further into future months, I'd love to get into some of Herzberg's motivation theory. I'm a big fan of that one, and equity theory of motivation. I'm a big fan of that one because they're practical. But you start looking down and you start looking inside yourself about, what do you value, right? What is going to get me excited? What is a goal of mine? And all of us are different. And so, from a leadership perspective, I teach the leaders that I talk to, you can't spend enough time understanding the complexities of each person that works for you, because everyone is motivated differently. And not that you can, I'm a big proponent of, there's only so much you can do to motivate someone else. Like, I'm not a big, everyone's really a self-motivated in my opinion, but there are a lot you can do to either pave the way, to boost that energy a little bit, to remove obstacles, remove distractions. But it's a really big challenge to identify what someone else's value point is, right? Or do they want just an attaboy? Do they want some appreciation, right? And I know Morgan mentioned, getting the bonus, and that's fantastic. And there's tons of science around money being a motivator or not a motivator. And and what clearly seems to be agreed upon, if you especially if you subscribe to the equity theory of motivation and Herzberg's theory of motivation, is money needs to be fair at a minimum, because then it can be a demotivator, right? So Herzberg uses the term as a hygiene factor or a satisfying factor. So money has to be present, needs to be appropriate, but in most instances, unless I'm like clipping eyeballs onto a teddy bear, that's a piecemeal situation, money will not increase productivity in most scenarios. So, but money is a form of appreciation, right? Some people, that's a really big one. For me, it's always been about learning and growth. So I'm a big motivated person by, is my job going to challenge me, right? Am I going to learn something? Am I going to have the chance to grow in a certain capacity? So over my career, I've taken a lot of lateral moves, right? So you need to spend some time thinking about this, not just about yourself. Maybe you have a really clear understanding of what's important to you, but start thinking about your team. Who your leaders are on your team. What are they motivated by? Do I know for sure? And if you don't know, that's okay, because that's one of the challenges of being a leader. Is not only is it difficult to figure out, you're given no time to do that, because your task list of performance checklist is so long. You got no time to ask and get to know the new employee to figure out, what direction and what values they have. um this intensity, right? um you know we can get crippled by how busy we are, and what our whole month looks like, and what should we be doing, and then all of a sudden we really let down, rather than saying, this is a key event, and I got to bring some intensity. You might have even heard my voice go up a little bit in this presentation, right? Because this is important to me, and I want to bring some intensity, to this exact situation. Um, going above and beyond, this idea of enthusiasm. When I really challenged myself on over the last 10 years, I'm very, very good at seeing what I don't do well, and what other people don't do well. I need to bring equal enthusiasm about what I do well and what other people's do well. That enthusiasm is contagious, right? And it's a little bit of a learned thing, because is it easier to just kind of be robotic and go through the motions? It absolutely is. And I know Morgan coaches, and as coaches, we all struggle with, am I celebrating their success as intensely as I'm celebrating their mistakes? And usually the answer is no. And that's problematic, right? We got to bring that enthusiasm into what we're doing. The idea of pushing through discomfort, right? Nothing, we all know life is not easy. And I tell my kids all the time, life is undefeated. Life doesn't care about you, right? And so we got to be ready to take those lumps and push through, right? We have to have the intensity to come out on the other side through, you know, continual practice, intentional practice, right? Perfect practice might be another way to say it, right? You know, we have to not just go through the motions, okay? And then persistence and consistency. Huge persistence fan. Um, you know, again, you look through some of the best things that have happened in your life personally, some of the most rewarding things that you've accomplished, some of the goals that have been fantastic for you. You know, a lot of those have happened because you persisted through something that was difficult, right? Again, if anybody's ever won a championship, you know, those championship experiences required you to sacrifice. They required you to adapt. Maybe you didn't play the role on the team that you thought you were going to play, but you played a role and the team won, right? Those sort of things are a part of motivation because what am I motivated for? Well, you know, I want to achieve that goal. I think I've got a path to do it, but now the life is telling me I ought to take maybe a slightly different path to get there. Do I have the maturity to recognize that? Do I have the ability to be flexible and adapt, you know, and still ultimately meet my goal? Um, Leadership is so difficult for so many reasons, but one of them is this idea of, do I have the energy to show up emotionally, show up physically in front of your staff, um, have the bandwidth to be emotionally available, to be empathetic. That is, those are exhausting. They're tired. That you're probably getting a little bit tired as I'm listing the list off, and you're not even doing them, right? So to actually find time in your workspace to do that is extremely difficult, and financially, you can't connect the dots regarding increased pay and time availability. Meaning you're doing on your own time usually. If you're a great leader, you are typically putting in more time than your coworkers for the same money, and that's part of the brokenness of our leadership process. The businesses, the team owners, they build out your to-do list so full that you really struggle to have time to show up for your people. And yet when you talk about how can I help their motivation, um, literally standing right next to them as they accomplish a task sometimes is a really big deal. And that's all it took. And you know, and then of course you can go a step further and show appreciation and, you know, do some of those things. So this idea of being persistent and consistent is going to help your motivation and really help the motivation of your entire team. So one last quote, that old Abe, you guys know Abe? He might know something, you know. That guy, he was pretty smart, I think. Um, Choosing between what you want now and what you want most. And again, um, it's challenging. You know, we all our egos, and Chad would know a lot more about this than me, but you know, our egos are all looking to preserve their own importance, and that sometimes pushes us towards this desire for short term or instant gratification, and um, and yet, yeah, I don't know. I want to have a great experience at Telluride when I'm hiking with my family, but am I going to make the time available over the next month to be in a better walking condition so I can do that? Right? We're just all struggling with that. And some people don't know exactly what they do want. Like, you know, I have people in my life that, you know, are still trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up, right? And that's a whole thing. Like that's okay too. And that's so anyway, that's so just a quick recap on these, you know, these three components, you know, split them apart, you know, think about where are you succeeding and where you aren't succeeding in your ability to be motivated. So yeah, so I appreciate it. We'll shut off. We got about 5 more minutes here to kind of close things up, and I'll turn it back over to Chad and stop sharing the screen.
Outstanding, Kyle. Wow.